Comms are a simple but hard thing to do. Many of the best esports teams in the world still don't do it well. The goal today is to give you the tools to start understanding how comms work in esports, with the hope that this lays the groundwork for further understanding and growth, where you can learn just enough to armchair quarterback the next esports listen-in, whichever floats your boat. Unfortunately, comms aren't a thing that happens in isolation, so the first thing we have to do is take a zoomed out view of the whole game. Before we fully dive in, a huge shout out to the Smite Pro League who just put out the listen-ins from the World Championship that inspired this, and the Jade Dragons players who were willing to talk with me as I did research for this video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and feel free to subscribe, as I intend to put out more videos on esports comms. Now, because what happens in a match between all of these games is so variant, I can't really describe things by outcome. Instead, I'm going to describe things by what's happening between a player's ear. During a match, at any given moment, a player's doing one of three things: talking, listening, or thinking. Technically, some level of thought is going to go into talking or listening, but the thinking category is about when you're really focused. This can be figuring out a game plan, or it can be focusing on mechanical execution. Each of these three pillars, as I call them, can switch around really quickly. You have to be prepared to go from one to the other for it to happen smoothly. Each of these categories has skills associated with them, and those skills can be developed over time. However, once a player's developed a base skill set in each of these, they're going to find a natural stat spread of how they allocate time and energy during a match. This spread can be influenced by a lot of different factors, such as role in game, history with different teams, general personality, intentional training, and many others. Overhauling a player's spread is incredibly difficult, so the player has to be fully on board with the idea for it to work, and they're gonna need extra support to make it happen. Unfortunately, doing this is rarely worthwhile over taking on a different player and getting them up to speed with the team, especially when time is a limiting factor, such as during the regular season or with a tournament on the horizon. With regard to talking, there are important personality elements to be aware of, the biggest of which is assertiveness. Some folks are going to be more naturally inclined to tell people what. It's an important component of a team to navigate, but overall, you just want to make sure that the assertive personalities are not bullying out the folks who are not very assertive, and you may want to potentially bolster someone who's not normally assertive to provide insight. I'll use talking as a segue to another issue. In general, you want teammates' stat spreads to complement one another. If you have too many folks who are primary talkers, the issue of folks talking over each other will be a constant issue. Similarly, if you have too many folks who are primary listeners, no one's saying anything for them to be listening to. And a group full of thinkers may execute beautifully, but it's going to be in different directions as no one's talking or listening to each other. Complementary spreads aren't nearly as important as having all of your players have good skills and habits related to comms. Now, there are some common misconceptions about comms that I'd like to address for folks who may not have played in a competitive environment. Comms actually iterate often for a couple of reasons. Firstly, comms are a skill, arguably 2/3 of relevance, and as such, they evolve as you learn. Secondly, comms are about getting everyone on the same page, which is a massive undertaking without a shared background. So you play and you review, and as you review, the team builds up that shared background. Sometimes when reviewing comms, there's an explicit, when I say this, we do X, Y, and Z, which is more akin to a playbook from traditional sports. Other times, you may be individually reviewing something, and now that you've taken a step back, you can think on how to efficiently say what you were thinking in a way that fits the available time. The more the team understands how they want to do things as a unit, the better comms can be. The second misconception I see often is the idea of the shot caller, or the in-game leader, which doesn't really work the way that many folks think. In general, the more familiar your team is with what they want to do, the more shot calling can be done by one person. This is how you have a somewhat consistent in-game leader. The legwork of thinking about decisions has been done before you even load in, between both scrims and review. And this is largely what happened at the Smite Season 10 World Championships for the Jade Dragons. They had phenomenal prep work that PBM was utilizing in a lot of his shot calling. But at different times in the game, different roles are naturally going to have the most info for making quality decisions. And so different players will take over giving the team direction. When the homework runs out, it pays to have almost every, if not every player, ready to be the leader in their area of expertise. This can be explicitly negotiated or intuitively determined. If you try to have one person in charge of it all, aren't able to keep a balance between thinking, talking, and listening, and things are going to suffer. You may want to have someone who is final say instead of exclusive shot caller in the event that there are explicit disagreements on what should be done. But these moments can be relatively rare, and if you have a solid understanding of who leads when, then this is unlikely to be a relevant thing. When the homework runs out, it pays to have almost every, if not every player, ready to be the leader for their area of expertise. This can be explicitly negotiated or intuitively determined. If you try to have one person in charge of it all, they aren't going to be able to keep a balance between thinking, talking, and listening, and things will suffer. Having everybody capable of picking up that slack is a massive thing. That's all the info I can comfortably fit into this video. Hopefully I've given folks interested in competitive a new insight into how things work, and folks who watch esports a better understanding of what's going on. There are many more things I can do to build on this foundation, but I felt I needed to lay this info out first. Feel I missed something or disagree, feel free to throw a comment down below, and if any players are interested in overhauling their stat spread, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to work with you. Next time, I'm looking to dive into the little habits and end up making a world of difference. Until then, catch you on the flip side.